Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Building Legacies podcast. I'm Adam Garcia. Today, I have one of my good friends from the industry, Kelly Disser. Kelly is an executive vice president at NAI Hiffman. He was one of the youngest top producers at NAI Hiffman. He was also on a top 10 list globally for NAI, which is an international company. Kelly, if you drive around the Midwest and you look at large industrial sites, I always seem to see your name on 80% of the signs is what it feels like for me. Kelly has about 20 years in this industry. He's built out his own team over at NAI. Most of those people I've met. He is a father, husband, coaches teams. He has a crazy workout regimen. Guy played football, at a elite university, and so really kind of like the living version of the American dream. So Kelly, thanks for coming on today.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we so Kelly and I, we met, how long ago did we meet now?
7-8 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Definitely before, I feel like COVID was definitely like a time stamp and marker on lives, and it was definitely before that.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny, our first meeting, it's kind of a funny story. I had a team out there hitting the pavement. You had your team out hitting the pavement at that time. And we talk about it afterwards. We met at Gibson's, and if you remember, we both kind of talked to ourselves, and then told each other after the fact. Neither of us really wanted to go to that meeting. I had a guy calling me, hey, you got to come meet these guys at NAI. And I'm like, well, is it the main guy or is it not? Your guy tells you, hey, there's this GC you got to talk to. And you're like, I don't give a fuck about GCs. And so, we had this thing, but you and I both ended up there, ended up having a couple cocktails. I think we stayed there for a few hours.
Yeah.
And then we're texting, golfing, and now we've kind of, gone to games together. We hang out sometimes more than, we work together. But we do have a couple active deals that we're working on, which I think is awesome. But yeah, I wanted you to just kind of share a little bit. I think your background's really cool. The point of this podcast really is to kind of, hear stories from people that are really trying to build a legacy. And you and I, when we go out, and a couple of weeks ago we had lunch, and, it's always talking about, what we're trying to set up, what we're trying to build, how we're trying to build these things. So I was kind of hoping you would just jump in, tell us how you got started, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I moved to Chicago almost 20 years ago, started at NAI Hiffman at that point. Prior to that, I graduated from Butler University in 2003. I had been working as an intern at Duke Realty for a couple of years while I was in school. Got a job with Duke full-time after that, and really had just been in industrial real estate ever since. I was fortunate to spend a little time with some of the friends of my dad growing up in high school, and he was in insurance, and kind of got a glimpse at what his friends and clients in real estate did, and thought that that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So kind of always had that in mind, and then took some twists and turns along the way, but I've been at Hiffman and focused on industrial brokerage for 20 years. And
going, even before all that, I know when you and I talked, you started working when you were, I think you said 10 years old or something. So you just, has it always just been the competitive kind of dynamic?
Yeah, I think part of it's definitely competitive. I've learned some pretty good lessons, sometimes some hard lessons through my career in athletics, but started back, I think when I was 10, I got my first paper route, and my parents and I and brother and sister still get a good laugh on some of the stories that came from that. It started out, I think I wanted to be able to, have certain things and be particular about what you might want to buy. And, it's like, all right, well, if you want something, go earn some money and then you can do it. So, get the paper route, and then I think I was in 5th grade, 6th grade at the time, and my friends are going out after school and getting together. And I remember being in tears. I didn't want to go do the paper route, and parents forced me to go. If you signed up for it, you got to go do it.
And you're happy they did that now?
Oh yeah, looking back on it, and having kids now, it's hard to find the balance of letting them be kids, have fun, but at the same time, some of the things that you do early on, you realize looking back later, it definitely had a big impact.
It was meaningful. Yeah. And we talk about that, almost every time we get together, right? That it's like, how do you balance the idea that you want your kids to enjoy the things that you've built, right, for your family, while also trying to make them self-sufficient in some way, so they don't grow up to be, spoiled brat kids, right?
Yeah, that's probably my biggest fear, and I've told him that. Like, it's my biggest fear is raising kids that are spoiled, and don't know how to work and don't know how to figure things out. So I think they get it, but you do the best that you can. Nobody's perfect, and I'm sure I've made some mistakes, but I think I'm really proud of kind of where they're at right now, and hopefully keep it up, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. So you went to Butler. You were playing football there, and you were a quarterback, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where one of the probably bigger, I guess, learning experience I think comes from. I was an all-state quarterback in high school. Wasn't terribly highly recruited as a 5'10", white quarterback.
6 feet in Jordans.
6 feet in Jordans. But, prior to that point, kind of was like the guy. And then when I got to Butler, I wanted to play immediately, and I got to be friends with the receivers and defensive backs, and knew that I could play like kind of day one and travel as a freshman there, where by the end of 2 days, I think I was backing up the kid that was starting, who was a sophomore, and as it turns out, he broke his ankle 6 games into the season, my freshman year, and then sophomore year too. So had I just stuck it out, who knows what could have happened, but ended up playing. I played at corner my freshman and sophomore year, and then my last 2 years started at receiver.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was fun. It was a good time, but definitely like that lesson in patience is probably one of the bigger reasons of why I'm still in brokerage today, because it's hard as hell to get started, and many times kind of question and wonder, was that the right move? But you just gotta keep working through it.
Well, and I mean, we'll get into this too. I mean, one of the things that I want to talk about, just because I get asked about this a lot if I try and mentor, kids coming out of school, even new hires that we have, they ask about brokerage, and, becoming a broker is really like going off on your own, right? There is no like base salary usually. It's like you're eating what you kill kind of thing. And then, coming from the construction space, I know that there's a very long leg on all these deals. I mean, you could work a deal for 10 years before actually something happens, right? So I think we'll definitely touch on that, and patience and kind of the importance of that. But so after Butler, you said you went to Duke then after that?
Yep. Started at Duke Realty. They had hired me as an intern, and I came back and got a job, which started full-time after I graduated, which I took an extra half a year. My senior year, I was on track to graduate in time, and I wasn't on the team my junior year, which is a different story. But I had another year of eligibility left, so they asked me if I wanted to come back and play as a grad student, or I think at the time I was taking a 1 hour weightlifting class. Oh yeah. And so I dropped that. I was 1 hour short, and I got 1 hour of intercollegiate athletics my 5th year. So that season, I played and practiced with the team. I worked at Duke, I think 2 or 3 days a week from like 8 to 3, and then went to practice. And so I was making a couple bucks and
you said you were the first real NIL guy.
Yeah,
you were getting paid to play football, just not by the people that you were playing for.
Right, it wasn't NIL back then. It's not what it was called, but it's basically what it was. So
right.
It worked out pretty good.
That's awesome, man. So then, getting into brokerage, I think one of the really interesting things is that, even when I met you, I kind of saw the way you built up your team, and there's all these young brokers out there and people that are debating how they get into real estate. Do they go to development? Do they go to construction? Talk about a little bit about how you built, your business now within Hiffman, kind of the team that you've put together. I think that's a really cool story. All your team is lights out. We've worked with these guys on, a bunch of deals together. And obviously that's why we bring you the deals we bring you guys, because there's always a delivery, on those things. But talk a little bit about that and kind of just, I guess, the hustle and struggle of building your team to then, in 2021 being one of maybe the youngest brokers ever at a larger spot, to be a top producer. I think that's like a big thing in the brokerage world.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's definitely been a lot of hard work getting to that point, but when I started at Hiffman, May 1st of 2008 was like just the start of the GFC and the great financial crisis. So here I am. I had good real estate experience. I was with Duke for a couple of years, Tabani Group with a couple of years. I had some really solid mentors at Duke right out of school, like guys like Charlie Padell, Jay Archer, who's passed, David Fronick too. And then I left. I went to Hiffman, and you kind of get there and you realize you're on you got to go figure this out, or at least that was kind of the position I was in when I got there. I think now, as competitive as the market's gotten, I think we try to bring people in on teams. But didn't know anybody in Chicago. I knew real estate. I remember the first day I walked into the office, realizing you don't know when you're going to get your next check. It was I was with Duke. I was with Tabani. I was 28.
Did you have kids at this time already?
No.
Okay.
So I, third job, first two went well, but like at 28, you got to figure it out. So there was just no other option but to go figure out how to get hired and make some deals, whether it's finding an opportunity for someone to sign a lease or sell a building or buy a building or sell some land. You got to figure out a way to create some value and then bring it to somebody who can take advantage of it and see it. And, if you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you want. So,
right.
You just got to go out there and do it. But
so were you on a team when you came over, or were you kind of working on your own?
So Larry Much hired me. It was he and Larry had been around for a number of years. He had a good career. Until the point, and when I got there, and so it was the two of us. At that point, he had been around for 20 some years, so he wasn't necessarily. It was my job to go find business, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
So just kind of hit the phones, hit the streets, and
old school sales.
Yeah.
Was it industrial when you started, or were you kind of doing everything back then?
Industrial.
Okay.
Everything. It was, even starting with Duke, everything I've always done has been industrial.
Yeah. So you come back, you come to NAI Hiffman, you're working under this guy who'd been in the business for a while, obviously brings you in because, to help him, pull some deals in, having someone run around and do all the stuff that he probably did, obviously, in the early part of his career.
Yep.
So how do you transition from that to, again, now running a team and building out a team? And you're also on the board over there too, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how does that? What happens there? How does that work out?
Well, it's not a straight line from there to here. Mike joined me 10, 11 years ago, and it was kind of he and I as a team. And he started straight out of college. So his knowledge of industrial real estate kind of started with us and with the company, and just continuing to grow a client base. And the difference is, though, now with the listing business, the agencies that we have, and our tenant rep business, like we have so much going on that if you're on the team, you're getting exposure and you're getting the reps and learning all along the way. And if you're making the calls that you should be making, you've got so much to offer, depending on who you get on the phone, depending on where they're at or what they need. You can take that conversation any direction. But same as when I was doing that more, you've got to go out and do it and pick up the phone, and it's a numbers game, So whether it's and I think it's probably still about, like, if you reach out to 100 people, you may catch 2 or 3.
Wow.
So
do you track that kind of stuff when you're building out your team? You guys track how many calls people are making and things like that?
I mean, I did when I started. I literally, and I still have the loose notebook pages.
Do you really?
Every day hash, a hash mark.
Wow.
On, how many people did you reach out to? How many did you get? And it's just kind of the foundation. Like for our business and our company, we have to go out and generate our own business. Some of the other, publicly traded firms, there's bigger corporate accounts and bigger teams that service them, but that's not how we operate. So.
Yeah, so so really, even still today, you guys are out, knocking on doors. Obviously, as life goes on, things get easier in the sense that you put in all that hard work in the beginning to build the contacts you have. I mean, what would you say is the ratio of deals that just come to you now based on the reputation and the friends and the people that you've built versus actually having to go out and hunt those deals? I mean,
we go out and hunt every day. That's what our clients hire us to go do, and I think that we do maybe a little bit differently. If you have a vacant building and you need to sell it or lease it, you hire us, and that all of us, me, Mike, TJ, Natalie, and we do track phone calls, emails, outreach to go generate the activity.
So and it's funny because I talk to people, obviously through normal life, but then on here now, since we started doing these, it's interesting talking to people who have built something because there's almost like this obsession with everything, not just you get to this point where you transcend okay, well, I'm trying to make X dollars this year. Of course, we all think in those kind of terms, but once you get your lifestyle kind of situated, it feels like everybody's more obsessed with the process then and kind of what does that process mean for them? And you, out of all people, I think you're obsessed with every part of process in your life, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't. That may not always be a good thing all the time, but there's a way that I've done things that it was required for me to do it just to, survive and then to get, elevate. And I think it's proven that it works, at least works for me, and that's kind of what I expect from the people, my team.
Yeah.
And they do a great job, and I know it's not easy. I know I'm probably not always the easiest guy because of my expectations. I mean, maybe they're not realistic, but it's realistic to me.
You can edit that part out later if you don't want your guys to hear they're not realistic.
They know. I'm not saying anything that they don't already know, but they do a great job and they'll be successful because of it. And if they have the perseverance to get through it, it's at this point you'll do okay. So the broker world is really interesting because, there's such a spread between the top and I'm just saying the bottom. Maybe that's not the right way to, put it, but between the top guys like you that are winning awards, getting added to boards, and then the kid that just steps out of school, doesn't know anybody and is trying to figure out, life. There's such a disparity there, obviously. And I don't think it's any different than the business community. It's there's people that have been, building businesses for years. Mm-hmm. There's people that are in the startup phase trying to get things rolling. What advice would you give to somebody who's coming out that wants to be a broker, or maybe somebody that isn't a broker today? Maybe they're playing in and around the space that we play in, but they want to get into the broker world. What's the top advice you give somebody like that? I think be ready to work and find a good mentor, because if you get with somebody, if you're willing to put in the time and you get with a mentor who's willing to help you grow, and then they, you help them get what they're looking for, it's invaluable because in our business, it's so hard today. I honestly don't know that I could have, if I was to show up in Chicago 20 years later, I'm not sure if I could do today what I did then.
Yeah.
Just because of
the
market's more competitive, the accessibility to the decision makers who you need to reach, they're almost too accessible, so they're impossible to, in some cases, to reach. And
I think too, we've, from an economic perspective, which I'm interested to get your take on everything going on, but from an economic perspective, between the 2008 financial crisis and everybody trying to recover for 5 years from whatever that was, to then COVID happening, changing the entire game, again, people have been beat up pretty bad. I've been beat up pretty bad. You've been beat up pretty bad. And so it almost feels too like there's a little bit, there's a little bit more of a negative connotation from, guys. And I try and get better at this, and I'm not great at it by any means, but of not really caring about, the mentorship thing. And, at this point, it's like you've been beat up for so long. Yeah. You're just focused on whatever you're focused on kind of deal.
Yep.
But then I think back to what you just said. It's like, you started because somebody kind of let you in, taught you the ropes, gave you a couple things. Same with me, right? Back then I started on Wall Street and, I knew some people, was able to get a couple interviews, and that really was enough to kind of start my career, which is the only reason all of this happens now. And, these things. My cousin is coming out of school. He wants to go to Wall Street and work. He's a junior, and he's been interviewing for over a year for a job that he'll get in 2 years. And he's trying to get a job. Didn't get looked at by some of the big banks. He's a Harvard grad, athlete, all these things. And I'm listening to him tell me all the stuff he's got to do and the case studies that he's got to put together. And I'm like, oh shit, if I was him, I would never make it out there, right? Yeah. Not going to the right school, not knowing, those types of people. It seems like it doesn't matter as much, but it just feels like people have been battered so much that it's like almost hard to spend your time. And both of us have been burned on training people, in the past. It's hard to dedicate your time to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that, but that's why if you can find one, the value of the mentor is so great. But where you're at, you've got to be careful with your time, because kids will tell you anything that they think you want to hear, or even it might even be what they think they want.
Right.
And then they get into it and realize, oh shit, this is a little bit more. This is more difficult. Takes a lot more work than what I thought. I don't think I want to do that anymore.
Yep.
Like I've definitely, unfortunately, heard that once or twice.
Do you think in today's world, we could be two old guys sitting at a table talking about the kids these days for a minute. Do you feel a difference in the work ethic, or is it just like an easy kind of cop out, or what do you see today when you're hiring young people?
I think the general theme is that not all. There are definitely, like, my team's amazing. Like they work their asses off. But overwhelmingly, I think there's more younger kids. I don't even know what you call them these days.
I don't know.
I feel like millennials are now like in their 30s.
I think that's me. Yeah, I think that's me.
So that's not even the right term. But they don't have a work ethic.
Yep.
But, at the same time, if you find a young person that wants to work, they'll, rise above the rest, because I don't know that there's that much depth to that competitive
to
market.
That bench back there.
But, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think, and we joke about it with some of my friends and peers that are brokers that are my age. I'm 45. Like, who's coming for you?
Yep.
Like who's 30 that you're worried about is coming up behind you. And I'm sure there's some people out there, but by and large,
it's not what it was 10 years ago.
I don't see it.
Yeah.
Like with the crew that's my age, that was like up and coming 10, 15 years ago. Maybe it's just perspective of where I sit, but but that being said, too, like brokerage it's tough, because your clients all there's other brokers coming for them too, so it's a service business, and our my clients are owners and executives that, like, when they want something, they want it now.
Yep.
And they want it right. And, that's what we provide to them. And if we don't, someone else will try.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, too, and a good segue. You talk about trying to build your business. It's like, 20 years ago when you decided you wanted to start doing brokerage, for NAI, that wasn't the time that, you went out and then created all these deals. You had to take relationships and take deals and, pull these things. And so there's kind of like a dirty part of this whole business building process, which, is not necessarily intentional. It's just that if you're going to do these deals, if you weren't there to do them, somebody else would do them. So it's like, could be perceived as, taking deals and trying to, pull things. But I think that's just the grit of all of it. Everybody I talk to here, talks about, these things. And most of the people, so far that we're talking to are, people that are already through that initial part. Mm-hmm. And so we get the benefit of looking back on it, at 2020 vision, having businesses and people that, are kind of working right now. But that initial grit and kind of just brawl, dirty kind of part of building something is, I think, what scares people away the most.
Yeah, or they think that that's what they want, and then they figure out what it really is, and it's too much.
Yeah.
So, but it's just the pace. When I first started, like I said, you don't know when your next check's coming. You don't know anybody. You have to go out and take 1,000 shots because you don't know how many will hit. But that's the pace that I got accustomed to.
Yep.
And that's still the pace that I operate at today.
Yeah, still cold to the idea that it's just part of the game. Sort of.
Well, and you can't let up, because the second you let up, there's so much going on that if you're not moving at that pace, you're dropping, the ball's getting dropped somewhere, and there's somebody there a competitor that'll pick it up.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, so as of today, I never know when they release these things, but it's April 14th, 2025 or 2026. Given everything going on in the world, we have, war-related issues. There's, political issues. There's all these things that are happening. Markets have been kind of wild, as late. So people see industrial buildings popping up all over the place. And I can't tell you how often people come to me saying, hey, how do I get into industrial? What should I look at if I'm, thinking about investing in industrial? So, I guess playing the role of, I'm the client, talking to you about these things. And again, we're not giving financial advice. We're not doing any of that kind of stuff. It's just, what are some things? Talk to us a little bit about the market. Talk about the industrial market, just your own perspective based on everything that you see every day.
The industrial market is good. It's strong. I mean, my perspective of it is, again, when I started was 2008 through 2012, which was probably some of the worst that anybody who's alive has ever seen. So relative to that, it's very good.
Give us an example back then. Like, what would be, like, what's one of the worst things or craziest things?
Back then, there were more. The issue was there was too many vacant buildings. Like, you could drive down the street and identify 3 or 4 vacant buildings. The trick was you had to find somebody who has a need, right? Go find a tenant or go find a buyer who's looking for space. Now, I can't tell you how many groups that we're working with that are looking for a particular building, a particular use, a particular type of setup. Vacancy rates are still historically low, and the challenge is now you got to go find the solution, find the building.
Yep.
But the market, I mean, depending on, there's 19 industrial submarkets throughout Chicago, 1.3 billion square feet of space. The vacancy rate in each submarket runs from 2.5% vacant, which is basically not much, none, to, I think, the highest vacancy submarkets probably still Southeast Wisconsin, north of 10%. That has a higher vacancy rate because there's so much land up there that market got a little bit
And just to put it in
overbuilt.
perspective, what is, like, in that 2008 kind of time, what was the vacancy rate?
In some markets, as much as I-55 was like 14-15% vacant at a point in time. Now it's not as low. Like Central DuPage is 2.5%. I think I-55 is 5 or 6%.
Oh, wow.
But I think where we have value, though, is it's you can't just say what's the vacancy rate for Chicago. It's you have to know, like, okay, within what size range, and in which of the 19 submarkets. Like, we're basically out of million square foot vacancy right now. In the course of the past 12 months, all of the million square foot buildings. I think there may be one in Northwest Indiana. And there's one that's multi-story downtown. I guess there's a 997,000 square foot building in I-55, but outside that,
You're tracking the details of these buildings.
they're gone. I'm always waiting.
And by the way, that's the obsessiveness right there. Is you go, let me check my database. You tap your brain, and you're like, well, there's one that's 999.
Well, I'm always conscious of the one person that'll call me. Oh, you forgot about what about that?
Yeah,
that one building.
Yep.
You got to caveat that, but generally speaking,
those are gone.
No million square foot buildings. So now you'll probably see a rush to develop a couple speculative million square footers. We have a couple of buildings that are in the neighborhood of 500,000 square feet that have been vacant. Like that size range, there's been a little bit of a slowdown in activity.
Really? So the 500,000 ones are the ones that are kind of stuck a little bit.
We're starting to see those move now as the millions have come off the rack, but and that's because you've got those million square foot buildings are generally larger companies, and they're doing regional consolidations, putting a couple 500s or 400s together under 1 million square foot roof for a national or eastern half of the United States distribution delivery. Because all of these logistic models for the larger distributors and 3PLs have gotten so much more sophisticated, and they're consolidating.
Well, we've walked spaces before, and I don't know if you remember, there was a space downtown we walked, and it was a mess. Everything was all over the place, and that was maybe 10 years ago. Now we walk, and there's people everywhere. Mm-hmm. Now you walk a site, nobody's even working. It's all machines, and it's just the way the world has changed in just the 10 years that we've been doing this is like almost unbelievable, actually.
Yeah, the buildings have changed, the designs have changed, the sizes of the buildings have changed. Chicago as a industrial market's matured. So like the areas where you'd want to own a smaller building, there's probably no land, minimal land, which, you've got to go further out, northwest, southwest to build generally. But like buying, owning what they call infill industrial buildings, like if you can buy those at the right price, they're, phenomenal investments. The problem is now the pricing has gotten high enough. Rents have all, rents are anywhere from 150% to 200% higher than what they were pre-COVID.
Wow.
I mean, everything's gotten more expensive,
that's crazy,
including the rents. So building values are up, probably not quite to that extent because cap rates have increased with interest rates and those increases that we've seen. We're starting to see those come back down again now. But the amount of investment activity and appetite to buy and own in Chicago is like unlimited. If you own the right type of building, that's one of the other things that's really developed over the last 10 years is like the specific sectors within industrial. You got food specialty, cooler, cold storage, processing buildings, and ownerships that focus specifically on those types of buildings. What they call IOS or ISF, industrial outdoor storage buildings that are like low coverage with yard space. We do a lot of that work, and then you kind of got your conventional infill space. That's the largest landlords in those markets, and they do own some larger distribution space, but like Prologis and Link, Ares is another one of the larger players. But it's the sophistication of the owners is like through the roof now compared to where it was 10, 15 years ago.
And think about the meetings we've had with even some of these people trying to put deals together. It's like everybody at the table. You have a broker team that, really deeply understands this market to a level that maybe, 50 years ago wasn't a thing sort of deal. You have us as a GC where, you have a bunch of finance guys that can actually put a deal together and kind of evaluate it. And then you have these owners and clients that, I'm thinking of one specific deal you and I looked at, but you have these owners and clients that these guys could have gone and been consultants. They could have been investment bankers. They just happened to be in the development world. And so it is interesting, the sophistication now of some of these teams that are being put together,
Yeah.
which I think is probably good in a lot of ways, but I think it also, creates a little bit of overanalysis sometimes on some of the stuff, at least that we're looking at out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you'll see in some of these investment deals that trade, like you'll see the out of town group come in that gets the most aggressive, and ultimately in essentially an auction is the high bidder.
Yep.
Where the local groups, maybe know too much.
Yeah.
Per se, or they know just enough to not overpay for a building.
Yep.
So, but that's what's great about Chicago. It's such a large market. It's you've got private buyers, you've got institutional buyers, and for the next guy in that buys, there's always the next guy coming in who there's always exit liquidity.
Right.
So, it's a great market.
So as you guys are operating in Chicago, but you touch Wisconsin, right? Do you touch Wisconsin?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Wisconsin, Northwest Indiana, and Southeast Wisconsin.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So that's kind of the realm. And do you still feel, overall, and it's an interesting conversation because everyone says, okay, everybody's moving out of Illinois, nobody's doing deals around here anymore. But it sounds like from what you're saying, there's still almost unlimited deals to be had in this market.
Yeah, Illinois, as much as we all like to bash the state, in comparison to some of the other states, like I think what's the metro Chicago population, 9 or 10 million people, like that.
Yeah.
Economic engine is massive, and we've got Lake Michigan, we've got O'Hare, we've got all the the Class 1. There's 6 Class 1 railroads that all
Yep.
East Coast, West Coast railroads all intersect in Chicago. You've got the UP and BNSF inland ports, intermodal yards down in Joliet and Elwood. So there's just so much here, and the population, what was driving the market 3 or 4 years ago was all e-commerce. Well, the
Right.
e-commerce demand was here because that's where the people are, and that's where the packages and the goods need to go to those people that live there.
Right.
You've got great labor for different types of manufacturing, different types of distribution uses. You've got great diverse labor base for all those different types of operations. We've had clients that they're dying to get out of Illinois.
Yep.
We've done site selections where it's get me out of Illinois. Tell me where I should go. And we built models for one particular group. We built a model and essentially laid out their operation in 15 different major municipalities across the eastern half of the United States, and including labor. There's a 100 person staff that operates that business. We found the labor inputs for each one of those positions in each one of those locations, and then calculated what's my annual labor cost. So including labor cost, real estate taxes, net of incentives, utility costs, average net rents or costs to build, land costs. Chicago's never going to be your lowest cost option. It may be within, I think in this case it was within 10 or 12% of the low cost option, but at the same time then if they had gone somewhere else, they'd also have to layer in another layer of management, factors. Plus the risk of how do we set up down there, particularly with food companies,
right,
to get those certifications and to get the right people and the right labor. It's not an easy task to go set up in Alabama just because you can get a building for half the price, or your taxes are that much less.
And it's we talk about it all the time, but it's it almost sounds like despite what people are trying to do in Illinois and some of the things that the powers that be are pushing that make people say exactly what they said to you, it's the geography and the infrastructure is what keeps everything kind of intact. It's almost like it's successful despite of some of the factors.
It's like a tax,
Yeah.
that you pay in order to operate here, but
Yep.
you couldn't operate that way somewhere else. It's like me. I grew up in Fort Wayne.
Yep.
I wanted to have a career in real estate.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, it's more expensive for me and my family to be here, but
Yeah.
what's the revenue opportunity here versus
Yep.
somewhere else. And
Well, I talk about moving to, I mean, I would love to move to Florida. It's kind of like the dream. My wife and I, the big hang up is always like, well, Naples is great. Naples is amazing. It's great. But, can I build, 50 car washes a year in Naples? Probably not. There's really not. There's not the economy to support that kind of thing. And then it's like, how do you find your people? How do you find your team? Is there where's everybody at? So then you say, well, you got to kind of shift to Miami. Well, yeah, but Miami has the taxes and has this. So it's like,
okay. And if you go to Miami, where are your kids going to go to school?
Correct.
There's the people here are fantastic. The families, the friends, the social. You can't put a number. You can't put a price on that. But that's what the Midwest and Chicago and I guess downtown to an extent, but like the suburbs of Chicago, you can't replicate that.
No, it's something that we have to deal with, and we all complain about it. But at least you're able to complain about it in circles where everybody's bitching about the same thing. So it's kind of,
you gotta have something to complain about.
Yeah, it's got to be something. So one of the things, the topic in the name of the podcast, building legacies, right? So I want to get into that a little bit. One of the, I'd say, most impactful things that anybody I've worked with ever has had on me was you making telling me that my kids need to go to a private school. We both happen to be Catholic, so it was like an easy way, for us to talk about it. But you said it's the best decision you'll ever make. You come to this state, you don't want, the kids propagated, and there was this whole thing about the culture and the people they meet and all these things. And I was so against it when I met you at first. Now I have 4 kids, 3 of which are school age, all of which are now in, private schools. So, let's talk a little bit about, family and the idea of building legacies and everything that you're building, everything you're working towards, kind of like the why behind it. So the opening question is, what is building legacies? Like, what does building legacies or building a legacy mean to you?
I mean, I think one of the biggest legacies that you'll be able to leave, behind your name is your kids. It's funny as far as the school thing goes. When we moved from Chicago to Glen Ellen, I had always heard how great Glen Ellen public schools and just the whole school system in general was. But I got to give credit to Audra, to my wife, on that, because she really pushed for St. Pat's, and I certainly wasn't gonna fight it. But now, I guess 11 years later, as I shared with you, it's one of the best things that we ever did. I've still got 2 kids there. My oldest daughter, is a freshman at Glenbard West, which is a phenomenal school, public school. But yeah, it just worked out. It was a great fit. You meet families and your kids develop great friendships. You meet their parents, and it's just a great community.
Well, you said something about private school, which is kind of what sold me, because my number one comment to you was, well, the real world is out there and they're going to have to face the real world. And you kind of laughed, and then you looked back and you said, yes, you're totally right. At some point, they're going to face the real world. However, I want them to be well equipped at the time that they have to go face the real world and deal with everything that we all deal with, every single day. And that kind of hit me, because then I'm like, okay, seeing our kids, both of our kids are on these like travel sports teams. And so, they're engaging and they're doing these things, and the things that are being talked about are like, crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
But having that foundation of like right and wrong and, some of the discipline that they get at that age, I think it's one of the few ways people maybe in our situation can push that discipline that we were talking about earlier, onto these kids to hopefully make them better.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, and they're probably much better at their age than what I was. At that point, I was just a public school kid.
Yeah.
But sometimes I hear the things that they say or how they react to a situation, and I know what I would have done. And seeing how they think and respond, they're much more thoughtful, I think, than maybe even than what I am at 45
today.
Sometimes.
Right. Some of our shortcomings when we lose it in these meetings, maybe that's public school, man.
I know my kids should be there instead.
Yeah.
But it's important for them to get the right foundation, and then when they get old enough, they can start making more of their own decisions. But I don't know. I mean, when you're that young, you just got to have some guidance, you know, and when you're at school, it's not coming from your parents. So,
Yeah.
you know, there are rules. You have to do shit that you don't want to do. And, you know, if you go through life just not doing something because you don't want to.
Where does that leave you?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting in line.
Yep.
You know, it's going to be a rough. By the time you get to the point where you figure that out, it's probably too late.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's why you get so many people that are disgruntled and pissed off and unhappy for whatever reason. But, like, it's not easy. You just got to do what you got to do. And at the end of the day, it'll work out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk a lot. I mean, you talk a lot about your dad and kind of just when we think about this legacy idea, it's the influence I think that your dad probably had on you and now kind of what you're trying to do for your own kids in that way. So talk about that, like kind of your sphere of influence, you know, and then, you know, when you're done, what does it look like when you're done with all this? You know, what's kind of the long-term view and, you know, how do you want people to look at you?
You know, I wish I knew what it'll all look like in 15, 20 years. But, you know, like I said, you want to, you know, put your kids in a position to, you know, have opportunities that maybe you didn't have growing up and start from a better place and get to higher levels than maybe where you started or what we're able to get to on our own. But I'm pretty close with both my parents. They were both great and really kind of why I am who I am today. But I remember my dad played football at Iowa and was like, I just remember growing up, he was just like a maniac.
Yeah.
Very respectful, but we definitely were. There was respect, but a little bit of fear there.
Yep.
And I just remember there was like three things that he said. Number one, because I was the oldest, and then I had a twin brother and sister that were 2.5 years younger than me, and it was like, you ever lay your hand on your sister or another woman?
Oh yeah.
You're done. And then that, you know, kind of being able to. His goal was for us to be in a better position than, you know, how he was raised, and kind of like that every parent should want that and have that goal for their kids to be able to, you know, level up from the generation before. You know, and I remember another thing that he always said was like, don't be in a position where you can let your money work for you, where you don't always have to work for the money.
Yep.
But, you know, outside that, just like hard work, character, do the right thing, you know, don't take shortcuts. You know, all the type of same stuff you try to impress upon your kids, or what I'm trying to do with mine today.
So if you look out and you're building this business and, you know, you have, you know, everything really is a family business in the sense of we're all kind of shaped in some good or bad, you know, by our families in a sense. It's like when you think about that and you think about, you know, what you're leaving behind, is it, you know, are you trying to put yourself in a position where this thing is, you know, self-sufficient? Do you see yourself kind of, you know, doing other things, or just trying to get into, you know, your idea when your kids, you know, read about you one day, or when someone's telling your kids, and you and I are long gone, right? And your grandkids are hearing about, you know, the stuff that they do. What will they say about you? What's your idea of what you'd like them to say about you?
Yeah, as much as we have going on, like the one thing I can give to them that I can control is my time. So I try not to get too wrapped up in, you know, I feel like there'll be a time too for other, you know, professional or, you know, achievements, or, you know, building a real estate portfolio, which is something we're, you know, kind of working on now. But, you know, it's time. So I coach all of them. I've coached various sports with. I think I'm helping coach a lacrosse team now, coach my youngest daughter's basketball team, my son's football team. My older daughter had coached some of her softball teams early on. But once you get old enough and within volleyball and softball, there's not much more help I can give you. But, you know, it's just giving them your time. I think there's nothing more at this age than they want from their parents than time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think finding how to do that is sometimes difficult. Like, you got to think not from what I want to do, but what do they want to do?
Yep.
You know, because given the preference to hang out with their dad or go run around with their friends,
Right.
they'd rather go run around with their friends. So,
Yeah.
you know, just finding fun stuff to do. Like, my oldest daughter's got her learner's permit now, and
Oh shit.
she's driving my car.
That's
getting driver's lessons.
Yeah.
So that's fun, but you know, just hanging with them now. And then I think, but you know, believe me, I talk to them all the time about, do you want to? Hey, what do you think about getting into real estate?
Yep.
And you know, I feel like I'm smart enough to know that the more I push that, probably the more they may not want
Hate
to.
it. Yeah.
But I think at some point, you know, they'll kind of figure out like what's going on and what it really means and what those opportunities are. But you know, it's even like, who knows if they want to get into real estate or get into something that's in the medical or like
Right.
animal related field. Like, I don't care as long as they're healthy and happy, and I could help them go down whatever path they want to do. That's all you
That's
want.
the aim. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I echo it. I think the same way. I think about the kids all the time, and it'd be cool one day to have them come into the business that you spend all this time, and energy and, whatever building. But also it doesn't really matter. It's like, I agree with you on the time thing and just trying to be present, as much as you can. I think that's a great one, actually.
Yeah.
So as we come to wrap up, I think this was awesome. It's very rare. I think it's funny that, everybody drives, people that aren't involved in real estate, they drive by these massive, properties. There's always a sign. There's always people's name. Your name is one of those names that people should look out for when they're out there. Kelly Disser, NAI Hiffman, can help anybody that has any degree of interest, no matter how big or small, right, in the industrial real estate kind of world. Whether you're trying to buy or trying to sell or trying to expand or build. Some of the things you talked about today is like a perfect example of, somebody could have a lunch with you that's thinking about playing in this game. And from that lunch, they can get more value than they would out of going and paying some consulting firm.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll probably even buy them the lunch if they take you up on it.
I usually buy.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of those, no offense to the consultants, but like, unless you're doing this every day, it's hypothetical.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And it changes.
Yeah, you're going to say, hey, last week I
it
saw
changes.
this.
It changes from, day to day, month to month, hour to hour. So
Right.
yeah, but we get calls and questions from people sometimes that think they want to buy something, and
Yeah.
the Chicago market is just so efficient and so competitive that you need somebody who knows what's going on to guide you through it.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Well, I hope everybody listening tunes in and, kind of, it's cool to hear the story. It's cool to hear kind of what made you, how you got here. I think there's so many young aspiring brokers that are out there. So that's why I was really excited that you agreed to come on here, man. And
Yeah, it's fun.
I just appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, dude. Thanks.
That's all I have.
Appreciate you having me. Good to be here.
Thanks.